So in this video, let's try to finish the program for printing the calendar for a given month. So let's see where we left off last time. We have the code that printed the first week or the first line of the calendar. Let's execute, make sure it still works. Yes. And we need to now print all the other days. So the first thing we need to know is basically how many days we should print, and for that we basically need two things, right? The month and the year. The year we need just for February to know if there are 28 days or 29. Remember, we covered this is leap year. I think in one of the videos I described how we would implement that. So we would need that function, which would say if this year is a leap year or not, and then we would need another function for getting the number of days in a given month, and these two together will give us basically the number of days we need to print out in this calendar. So let's write these two functions now, and then we'll continue with the rest. So we'll just start with another function. So ignore static, as I said. So the method that will indicate if the year is a leap year or not should be Boolean, because that's a condition and it can return only either true or false, nothing else. So bool is leap year, and then it takes only one parameter, which is the year, number of year, or the year itself. So, and the logic was, so we can say bool leap is leap equals, so it's either divisible, it's divisible by 4, and the way we do that is use this mod operator again. So if the remainder is 0, it means it divides by 4, and then end, it should be either not divide by 100, or if it divides by 100, it should also divide by 400. So we should say year mod 100 is not 0, or, so this is conditional operator, which means it will evaluate. So if this is true, right, if the year doesn't divide by 100, the second part won't even be evaluated because it will already return true. So if it divides by 100, then we need to make sure it also divides by 400. Okay, and then we can say return is leap. So since we're just defining a variable and then returning that, we can just skip and just inline this with we just in one line just return that value. Okay, so this is all we need to identify, to determine if the year is leap or no. And now we need the other function, which will return the number of days in a given month. So let's say integer. Since we know it cannot be greater than 31, we can return short or even a byte, but for now let's just agree all the integer numbers will use integer type. And then we say get number of days, and the input is just the month, and we agreed that month is a value between 1 and 12, 1 being January, 12 being December. So in this case we'll use the switch statement from control flow statements. We'll say switch and see what's the input month, and then depending on that, so case 1 is January, we can say return 31. So case 2 is February, we can say return, and then now it depends. So now we'll use this function here. Oops. Control C, Control V, and then we say So now see, we also need to pass the year here. Let's actually make it consistent with other methods. So make the year first. So we'll say year. If it's leap year, then we'll say 29, otherwise it's 28. And then case 3. So this is again 31. And remember, if we have the similar statements, if we want to execute the same statements for multiple cases, we can just group all these cases together, because once the control hits one case, it will continue with all the rest until you either break from the switch statement or return, which is even stricter or stronger statement, because it returns not just from the switch statement but the whole function. So January, February, March, May, July, and then August, October, and December. All of these are 31 days, and then February is special, and then we can say case, whatever is left, 4, case 6, case 9, and case 11. All of these are 30 days. Okay, so this is our function. So if we check this problem, it says not all code paths return a value. So for month, 1 to 12 are not the only possible values, right? It's an integer, it can be 100, it can be -10. But, and there is a good way of handling this kind of input, but for now we didn't get to that theory, so we'll just say default. So if none of these cases above happen, we'll just say return -1, so no days or 0, it doesn't matter. But we'll always use this function. We'll pass month from 1 to 12, so we'll never hit this default case. For now, this is good. Okay, so having this, let's get back to our problem now. So we know number of days. We can say number of days equals, and then call that function, right? And in this case, it will be 30 for this particular input. So, okay, we have the number of days. So one way to continue is calculate the number of weeks left to print out, and then write a loop to iterate through weeks, and then in each week write a loop from 1 to 7 to iterate through days and print out the days. But in this case, we also need to consider that the last week is might not have 7 days, right? It can be 1 to 7, anywhere between 1 and 7 days in the last week of this month, or the last line of this calendar. So, which means we need to get how many we need to print on the last line. So to get that, we can do one thing. We can do, so first, number of weeks. So to calculate this is basically we need to take so whatever we skipped, right? We need to count this 2 because it offsets the number. So let's say even if it's February and there are 28 days, so 4 weeks, but if it starts from Tuesday, then we need 5 lines, not 4. So we need to count the skipped ones too, and we basically say skip count and then plus all the days we have for this month, and then we should divide this by 7. This will give us the full weeks, basically, right? Everything except if there are less than 7 days on the last line, it won't include the last line. And since we actually already printed the first line, we should subtract 1 from this. But we named it number of weeks, so we'll subtract in the place we use it. And then days left on the last line would be this one, same thing, but in this case we take the remainder, right? So let's see what this equals to for this specific case. So skip count is 2, number of days is 30, so 32 divided by 7 is 4 lines, right? This is like how many complete lines, and as you see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the last line is not full. So this will give us the number of days we need to print on last line, which is 32 divided by 7, 28, and take the remainder, which is also 4. So all good for this one. So we have number of weeks and then days left. So we can take this and go to our program. We can say var days total. Let's just do this, and then say get number of days, which is the syntax for calling the function we just defined. We have year and month as input parameters, so we can use them. And then we paste this number of weeks is, remove this, and then days left is on the last line. Okay, we call this days total. So this gives us basically the weeks and days. So what we can do now is iterate, as I said, iterate through week. So this doesn't really matter because we don't print week numbers, so it can be from 1 to number of weeks. So since as we said, right, since we already printed the first line, we need 1 less, so that's why we don't do less than or equals, we just say less, and then increment w, and then we already have the day, right, the current day we stopped at, which should be the 6th. So what we do with it is just write another loop, which is day from 1 to 7, because in each week we have this. These are like the full weeks, right? So we should print all the 7 days. And what we do is just repeat this thing. And at the end of each week, we just move to the next line. So let's see how this works. Okay, so see, it printed all the 4 weeks. And then we have 4 days left to print at the end, which means we need another loop. D equals from 1, or what we can do is use the existing days day variable, right? We can say while day is less than or equal to number of days total, right? While we are still within the month, we can say this thing basically, print a day, and that's it. Yes, so let's try. Okay, so here we go. So we have the full calendar for this month. We have a problem with alignment, so we'll try to fix that later. See, like the numbers, since some of them are 1 digit, some of them are 2 digit, they don't properly align in the same column. And then we still have this September issue. But before getting to these visual problems, let's just think about the code we have. So see, we have a simple problem of printing out basically 30 or 28 to 31 numbers, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 loops to do that simple thing. And the problem of and the reason for that is well, let's go back to this one. So we are treating these numbers as a two-dimensional array or list, right? We have one dimension being the lines or the weeks, and the second one being the days or the days of week. And that makes it more complex. So instead of that, we can just treat this as a single dimensional array, or just a sequence of numbers from 1 to the end of the month, the last day. And instead of calculating which day to print for this day of week, we just print all the days or dates one after each other. We just calculate what's the current day of week, and the only thing we need to the reason we need the current day of week is if it's a Sunday, we need to change to the next line. So let's try do it this way and see how much more cleaner the code will be. So let's keep this. So let me show you what it looks like now. So print calendar, we just go one loop, print empty, skip spaces, then we start printing the days for full weeks. Actually no, these are days on the first line, then days for full weeks for each week, and then finally the remaining days if there are any. So instead of this, we are going to remove these two loops, and we are going to also remove, okay, we'll start using this one. So starting with day 1, we just say, now we iterate through days, not the day of week. So we say while, right? We can say, instead of 4, we can say while day is less than or equal, and we need these things. Okay, now we don't need number of weeks anymore. We don't need days left anymore, but we need the days total because we need to know how many we should print. So we are saying while days less than or equal days total, we just write the day and increment. Okay, so if we do this, let's just see what this does. It will be just a single line of all the days. So the problem is, again, right, after every Sunday date we need to put a new line character so that it moves to the next line. And the way we do it is by tracking this for current day of week, and initially it's the one we got, we passed to this function. So this is our input, right? That's the one, this is the correct thing for the first day. But going forward, every time we print the day, we should check if day of week is Sunday, which means it's 7, then we need to move to the next line. So we can copy this from here and put it here. Okay, so after Sunday we just move to the next line, and after incrementing the day of week, we also need to calculate, sorry, after incrementing the day, we also need to calculate what day of week it is. So the problem now is day increments horizontally, right? It can cross the 1 to 7 boundary. It can be 8, it can be 20. So what we need to do is calculate the day of week based on this day. So we can say day of week is, so the way we can do this is, since there are 7 days in each week, everything that crosses 7, we need to subtract 7, right? Or divide by 7, take the remainder. So since the remainder is in the range from 0 to 6, we should map 0 to Monday and 6 to Sunday instead of 1 to 7. So which means initially we should offset or subtract 1 from our current value, then divide by 7, take the remainder, and then add back the 1 to offset it back to have the index starting from 1 instead of 0. So basically what we'll do is day so we can calculate it based on the day, on the value of the day, or we can calculate it based on the previous value of day of week. So we can say day of week minus 1, right? This is offset because it's 1 to 7, but we need 0 to 6. And then we divide by 7, take the remainder, and then finally we increment 1 to come back to 1 to 7 range instead of 0 to 6. And yeah, and that's it. Let's see what this does. Okay, it didn't change anything. Let's see. Save day of week. Oh, but the problem is, I think we never changed day of week, right? So this always calculates the current one. So we also need to increment to move to the next one. So we need to increment this by 1, basically move to the next day, and then only subtract 1, divide. So these two can go together, and then we just have this simpler expression. So now, okay, now it worked. We have the same result as with the longer code, but see, now we have only 2 loops. One is for the skipped spaces, another one is for all the days, right? So now it's much smaller, much easier to understand, and yeah, more maintainable. That's so one problem we still have is the alignment. And so in essence, we could even use just one loop running from 0 or 1 to days total plus skip count, and then but then the code wouldn't be simpler, because we would still have an extra if check inside, which would say if this is still the skip space, print a space, if this is a number, print a number. So that doesn't really help us with code complexity. I think this is better, so we can keep this. And so let's fix this problem, which is September, right? So 9 should be September, and to do that, we basically need a function to convert the number of month to the name of the month, right? So we can say, it doesn't matter where we add it, I'll just add it here to have it in the center. So we need string as a return type, because we need the name of the month, and then get name, let's call it get month name, and we pass the number of the month. And again, we need this switch case too, and in this case we cannot just group them together because each month has a different name. So since our example is for September, we'll just I want to type all the things here, all the cases. You'll need basically cases from 1 to 12. January. I'll just have, oh, I forgot the switch. Okay, so you can write the rest yourselves, but I'll just, since our example is with September, I'll just add September, and then I'll say default in all other cases return some month. Okay. All right, this is good. Cancel, we don't need to save this. So instead of printing the September here, we can say get month name and then the month. Okay, so run. Okay, see, now it's September. So if we pass something which we didn't define in the case, so 1 to 9, let's say 8. So instead of month, 9, we say 8 here, and run. So see, it's a sum month because we don't have the name for that specific case. Okay, so one thing fixed. So just one note about this syntax. So this function writeLine accepts one single parameter, which is a string. But this value, this is called an interpolated string. So interpolation is the concept of, or not concept, functionality feature of having expressions evaluated inside a string. So everything taken into this curly braces is considered an expression, not a literal, and it will be evaluated at runtime before generating the full string value. So all this function call will happen, this variable will be replaced with its value, and so on. So this $sign in front of the string, literal, indicates that this is interpolated string. And interpolation is a pretty common thing. It is supported in a lot of languages, but the syntax might not be the same. So this $sign is specific to C#, or maybe there will be more, but it's not the same in all languages. So let's fix the alignment now. So one thing we could do is, the problem with alignment is because we have the difference between digits, right? The number of digits, some numbers are 2 digits, some numbers are 1 digit. So one thing we can do is, if it's a 1 digit, add extra space, right? So when we are printing the day here, we can do if day, and to check if it's 1 digit, we can just say if it's less than 10, right? Because it starts from 1, so 1 to 9 is less than 10. So if it's less than 10, we can output an extra space, console write, and just a single space. So let's see what it does. Okay, so this aligned everything in the second line here, but not the first line. And because we are outputting the first line in a different loop here, and we don't do that extra space. So the first one, so for skipped element, basically now we need 2 spaces. So let's run. Okay, and the same thing for the names of the days, right? The headers, we also need to add this extra space to align them all. Okay, now it looks much better. So with this, basically we have our solution. We can actually add an extra check to print these extra brackets around the number, which is our input. But yeah, that you can do it yourselves if you want. That doesn't change much. So one thing to note is this calendar is for a month that has this condition where we say this day falls on this day of week, right? So year and month we only use to get the number of days, really, but we don't guarantee that the calendar will be right, the correct calendar for this month of this year. For instance, if we change this 2022, it will print the exact same thing, only changing the header, but this won't be correct for 2022. So yeah, we just printed this to have an idea or header about how it would look, but don't rely on this like as a real calendar. It's not correct. And another thing I want to mention is we have a bug here. Let's see. We have a bug somewhere, or maybe I fixed it already. I think this one had an issue, but let's see. So this one, I think I fixed it from the previous one time. So we had a bug where Sunday wouldn't fit because I didn't do that shift by 1 and then bring it back. So I just divided by 7. So let me explain what I mean. So this one, let's say we had a month where it started from 1st on Monday. So we would have 1, 2, 3, 7 Sunday, and then 14 is the next Sunday. So if we think in the previous, yeah, see, first same column, or day of week. So we calculated this as 14. Let's see, 14 divided by 7. So it would be 0. So instead of 2, it would be 0, which is wrong, right? Because it should have been 7. But because the problem is there, because again, I didn't offset it by 1 to get to the remainder of dividing by 7 gives a range of 0 to 6, not 1 to 7. So this would have been a day minus 1 divided by 7, take the remainder and then add 1 back. Right, this would give you 14 minus 1, so 13 divided by 7, take the remainder, which is 6 plus 1, so it would be 7, which would be the right thing. So I think I already fixed that here. Yes, so let's see, what else did I miss? I think we have everything working for this one. So I suggest, if you want to try something yourself, just try to extend this program to print the calendar for the full year. Basically with all the same inputs, all these 4 numbers given, just print the calendar for the full year. You'll need basically another 1 loop which will iterate through months, all the months, 12 months, and it will be the outermost loop. And you'll need also an extra calculation of finding out what's the first day, or which day of week is the 1st of January in that year, and so on. So that's a good exercise to try. And last thing I want to mention here, yeah, apparently we'll need the 12 cases for this. And let's see, is leap year? Yeah, I think this is good enough. So this code that is basically executing our function. So see, we can write it basically multiple times. Let's say 2022 February 10th is let's say Tuesday. So if we run this, we'll have another calendar, and we found a bug. See, this one goes through 8. So we'll cover like unit testing next time, but apparently we have a bug. See, we changed the input and now this doesn't work. We have 1 extra day on the first line and 1 missing on the last. So I think we spent too much time on this again, and I don't want to cover this here. This is another good thing for you to figure out where is the bug. And I think we didn't define what bug means, but bug is a code that doesn't do what you expect it to do. So you wrote some code which is wrong, and that is causing this problem. So you can just look up through the code, understand why we have 8 here. I suspect something might be wrong with this one, or basically this means we treat 8 as Sunday because we put a new line character only after Sundays, right? Day of week is 7, then only put a new line. So here 8 is considered day of week 7, whereas it should be 1 and 7 should be 7. Okay, so this is good enough. This is a good exercise for you to print the calendar for the full year and also find the reason for why we have this issue if we provide this input. Thank you very much and see you in the next one. Bye.